Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex. Lord, the Atlanta Falcons released their first depth chart of the season, and there were some surprises. Not so many on the offensive side of the ball. We see Elijah Wilkinson. He's going to start at right tackle. We've talked about that already. We'll see how that goes. I imagine there'll be some shuffling over the first few weeks, especially if Wilkinson struggles. Hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully he can keep Michael Penix protected, and the Falcons end up winning that week one matchup, and we can all shut up about Elijah Wilkinson. But until that happens, we're going to discuss it. On the defensive side of the ball, though, is where things go, and I think it starts with Brandon Dorlus being named the starter. Now, is Brandon Dorlus being the starter a knock on Rukaroro, your second-round pick that is not now your a depth piece going into year two after not really playing as a rookie? Are you more excited about the fourth-round pick from a couple years ago? Only appeared in 2 games last year, 3 combined tackles, but he is now starting pretty much in place of Grady Jarrett next to David Onyemata, which is scary, exciting. I guess we'll find out in week one.
I think it's a bad thing. It can only be a bad thing. And the only reason I say that is because in the final preseason game, one of those guys was playing into the fourth quarter. Rukaroro was playing deep into the second half of the final preseason. That is not a good indictment of what this coaching staff thinks of him. Now, Brandon Dorlus didn't even suit up for that last regular preseason game. So it's a pretty big indictment on a guy. He's not only a second-round pick. You traded a third-round pick to move up. So essentially, he's 2 day 2 picks worth of a draft pick. It's not good. Brandon Dorlus, we can all be excited. I think it was really more or less Jimmy Lake's scheme than anything, and we'll continue to go back on that because I think everyone's going to play better under Jeff Ulbrich. But, particularly Brandon Dorlus, because at Oregon, you saw him playing a defense in Dan Lanning's defense that asked him to be aggressive, asked him to kind of try and slice through the line of scrimmage. And then last year you had a guy in Jimmy Lake who was asking him to maintain gap integrity. And that's just not who he is as a player. Didn't make a lot of sense why we drafted him. If that was the scheme, you just drafted a good player and then asked him, square peg, round hole type of a situation. But Rukaroro is a guy that the Falcons absolutely need to pan out. I mean, we could all be excited about Brandon Dorlus, but you can't. This is putting lipstick on a pig. If you're like, Brandon Dorlus is so good, Rukaroro can't start. That is not acceptable.
Yeah, it's not acceptable unless Brandon Dorlus is really, really good. I mean, because if you think about it just in a grand scheme of things, if in rounds 2, 3, and 4, you're able to land a really good starting tackle that's able to competently replace Grady Jarrett, if it happens in the 4th round or the 2nd or 3rd, it's more semantics. But you're right. I mean, Rukaroro was the 35th overall pick. I mean, he was borderline a first-round pick. And we've talked about it several times. Like, go look at the guys selected after him. All at positions of need. All were day one starters on impact teams that made the playoffs. Fisk, what's his name? Lassiter from Georgia. Like, there were a lot of guys around there. And when Rook was drafted, everyone was like, what the hell? Like, everyone had this laundry list of guys that made it out of the.
I mean, it's classic case scenario where Terry Fontenot has had multiple of these draft picks where everybody goes, what?
And then he turned out to be terrible.
And then everybody is right.
Yeah, no, I know. And it's like you're going to go out there and make a reach because you have this gut feeling on a guy trading up when you probably didn't ever need to trade up.
I don't think anybody was going to take him.
And it's really like, it's not as much as you gave up from James Pierce, but considering we got a 3rd-round pick back, which we turned into Xavier Watts, and I know we gave up a future 1st-round pick. We'll see where that ends up, but it's not too far off. And this guy has basically, he's a second stringer that's played in 9 games and made absolutely 0 impact. So that part, I don't think you can argue, is discouraging. Now, hopefully it means that Brandon Dorlus is a stud. And again, we're having a different conversation, but that's something we're going to be watching going into week one.
They play different positions. So it's not like it's either or. Like, Rukaroro is a bigger guy. And I figured he was going to be the kind of difference maker in the interior so that this run game or this run defense wasn't going to be an issue. Brandon Dorlus and David Onyemata are not, David Onyemata's got some size on him, but Brandon Dorlus is a smaller interior defensive tackle. That's why he was so athletic at Oregon and able to rack up all those pressures and sacks, is because they just asked him to be more athletic than a fat, ugly guard. And he was most of the time. And it's going to work more often than not, I believe, in certain situations and pass sets. But asking that guy to hold up against, double teams and anything like that is scary. Very scary to me.
Yeah. Secondly, you have the two James Pierce and Jalen Walker combined. I think that they'd be nasty. Jalen Pierce is probably an amazing player. But those two guys are listed as second stringers behind Arnold Ebiketie and Leonard Floyd. I don't think there's any surprise there. I've said it on several occasions. I really think people are going to be surprised by Arnold Ebiketie. Now, he's going to have some better pass rushers around her. It's going to have to be a group effort for him to rack up those sack numbers. But I thought we saw a lot from him at the end of last year. And I think, he's my pick to pop. I want to say that.
Every year in the final 8 weeks of the season, he's our best pass rusher. I mean, I think 80% of his production, I'm just pulling that number out of my butt, but it feels like 80% of his production has come in the final 2 months of the season. If he's just that guy from week 1 or even week 4 and on,
you got your double digit.
You've got your double digit sack artist. And that is something that nobody, while we all want to see Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., this is a different equation completely than the Rukaroro Brandon Doyless. It's Arnold Ebiketie is entering a contract year. It would be nice if we were able to get him back and and let Leonard Floyd leave. And now we've got Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr., and a guy who is butting into somebody who's a reliable guy on the edge, and Arnold Ebiketie. Yeah, not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I he's my pick to pop. I think James Pierce Jr. is going to see a ton of time. I wouldn't look into that too much. If I would expect him to be on the field, rushing the passer in some form or fashion, more often than not on third downs. Anytime you got an obvious passing situation, I think you're going to see it, and then maybe grow into a full-time starter by season's end. I'm very interested to see how they use Jalen Walker. Obviously dealt with multiple injuries. We'll see how much work he gets, but another guy that not too worried about him being the second stringer. One of the interesting kind of down the depth charts thing is I saw Billy Bowman obviously gets the start at the nickel corner spot. Right behind him ain't D. Alford. He's listed as the backup to A.J. Terrell. It's actually Natrone Brooks, who was kind of the star of the preseason. And listen, we all want Billy Bowman. I love Billy Bowman, another guy that's kind of a pick to pop. I hope he goes out there and doesn't struggle, but we are talking about a converted safety that's going to be starting at the nickel position in the NFL from day one. There could be some growing pains, and we could see some shuffling around at that position. And Natrone Brooks, undersized guy, 5'10", 175. Don't play like it. Don't play like it. He really has impressed the last 2 preseasons. He played 9 games last year, so interesting to see if he gets some early run if Billy Bowman starts to struggle.
I'd be comfortable with either of those guys, at least. You'd rather have a guy like Billy Bowman in there taking his lumps than a guy like, per se, D. Alford, who we know is, Saturday afternoon barbecue chicken. We know what he is. I think we can all kind of agree that 2023 with Ryan Nielsen may have just been a flash in the pan. 2024 may not be as bad as he really is, because we all know Jimmy Lake had no idea what he was doing. But I do think he's closer to the barbecue chicken than, one of those best nickel corners in the league. So if you want a guy to take his lumps, it looks like whoever is there is going to take their lumps. Mm-hmm. You'd rather it be the guy that you drafted and has the potential to be, to eventually develop into a consistent contributor there.
Yeah, listen. All of me wants Billy Bowman to be a stud, just like all 4 of these guys. But I just want to I wanted to bring up Natrone Brooks strictly because he has balled out in the opportunities that he's given. And I wouldn't be totally against, whether it's injuries. Dude, they're going to happen, right? You got to have solid depth. And even if that's just what he is, I will be interested to see. It looks like he's going to get some playing time at some point this season when someone goes down. So I'm very interested to see.
Hopefully he's just the first backup. He's just the first corner off the bench.
Period. Yeah, period. I completely agree with that. Coming up after the break, let's get into some of this week 1 matchup. We almost made it, guys. We've got NFL football on the rest of the week, Thursday, Friday, college football Saturday, and then the Falcons play on Sunday. Let's get into this matchup and what we think the Falcons are going to look like come Sunday. The Atlanta Falcons kick off week 1 with a divisional matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We ain't talking about 2024. It's 2025 time. The Atlanta Falcons are making the playoffs. They did go 2-0 against the Bucs last season, but they failed to win the NFC South after holding a comfortable lead. What did we learn from the games last season? Is that it's going to take a lot of points to beat the Bucs. And yes, they're without Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan and Tristan Wirfs, which is definitely the biggest loss of the 3 given their prowess at the wide receiver position. So there is going to be some opportunity, but I don't think there's any doubt that we're going to need some points to win this game.
Maybe not. Are we sure what this defense is going to look like? I mean, even if we're just average, that is just such a vast improvement over what we've watched for, going on a decade now of just awful defenses. I mean, 2017 and 2016, they weren't world beaters by any means. They were probably better than average, but we haven't even been like outside of the bottom 5, maybe the bottom 7 and that's generous in terms of a total defense, particularly the pass rush, that if we can just be average, maybe we don't have to score 30, 35, 40 points. Like maybe, Baker Mayfield is a little scatterbrained without Chris Godwin. Maybe he is a little, nervous without Tristan Wirfs protecting his blind side. Maybe, Jeff Ulbrich and these new pieces, a lot of the same pieces, but still a lot of new pieces do make a substantial difference. Because I think I would be shocked if Michael Penix and this Falcons offense hit the ground running and went, 450 total yards, put up 35 points, just looked like a seamless transition. It just nothing even phased the no preseason snaps, all the new pieces, especially the quarterback and right tackle that I think we're going to have to play defense. Like if we do not, at least stifle this Bucs offense, I do not feel good about it at all because I don't know how. I mean, it's going to be a work in progress, this Falcons offense. I mean, it's that simple. We've got a rookie quarterback, essentially, with a blind side who we have no idea who he is, and Zach Robinson, who has to build on what was a pretty uninspiring first season.
Yeah, I mean, unless Michael Penix is that guy. Listen, my full season with Zach Robinson and being the starting quarterback, that's going to be so beneficial for Michael Penix. I understand, yes, there are a ton of concerns about right tackle. And I think that could be where this game comes down to, like who can protect the blind side better without the blind side blockers that are starting. I probably give the edge to Tampa Bay simply because they're not down to their third string guy, a guy that hasn't played right tackle since 2021, but who's going to be able to do that better? Can Zach Robinson, as we've talked about for weeks now, ever since this stuff came out, can he come up with a game plan to protect Michael Penix and work away from that right side? Can the Falcons run the ball against this Bucs defense, which they did have success doing with in the past? So I think it's going to come down to a lot of it, but listen, maybe Michael Penix is that dude. I mean, maybe he does go out there and it's just like, he's that good. He's that good. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but maybe he is going to be the guy. And we talk about Baker Mayfield all the time. What's he love to do? He'll throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball into harm's way. Yeah. And can guys like Xavier Watts, who was a ball hawk, Billy Bowman was a ball hawk in college, can those things translate to the NFL? And obviously we know about Jesse Bates and the ball hawk that he is at the NFL level.
And I don't know who their offensive coordinator is. Maybe you do. They got a new one. Again, third one in third year, not for the wrong reasons, for all the right reasons. Dave Canales put together a hell of an offense 2 years ago, got the Panthers job. I said it last year. I said, that's going to be a really big loss because Dave Canales is as bad as the Panthers were. He is still a good offensive mind. Liam Cohen was even better. Liam Cohen was one of the best offensive minds in football last season. He gets a job with Jacksonville. I don't know who this next guy's up, but they can't get it right 3 times in a row, I feel like. I mean, that's just, maybe they can. Maybe Todd Bowles just has like that eye for, the next it offensive mind, but that's a big aspect of this game where it's like Baker Mayfield is with his third offensive coordinator in as many years. Like, I really do feel like this is going to be, everyone's expecting this to be a high scoring game because the Bucs defense sucked last year. The Falcons are pretty much starting 4 rookies. 4 rookies are going to get a substantial amount of playing time at least and a whole new scheme on that side of the ball. I think it's going to be a lower scoring affair because of one, I think the Falcons defense is going to surprise some people. And I just think the Falcons offense is going to be a little bit slower starting than a lot of us are hoping for.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think that's the favorite of the two, right? Like that, like if that's the way that I see the game going out. I could see a scenario where you're painting as the Michael Penix is better than we all think he's going to be. And he hits the ground running because he's just that good in a full year as the starting quarterback. just takes this offense to the next level, kind of like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's the scenario where this does. And then Baker Mayfield just does his thing, and this Falcons defense continues to flounder, especially with so many rookies. So there is the scenario out there where this is a shootout, but you typically look at how NFL teams, how long it takes offenses to adjust. And typically most teams don't get out of the gates running. There's not a lot of scenarios where you get out of the gates running. And there's definitely a lot of moving parts on both of these offenses and injuries on top of that make it difficult to imagine there's not going to be any hiccups, especially with Todd Bowles on the other side, who's a fantastic defensive game planner. And he's going to throw some things at Michael Penix that he's never seen before. But we can't talk about this matchup without Mike Evans and what the hell you do about him. And this is where I think the Bucs not having Chris Godwin and not having Jalen McMillan, even though they have 4 legitimate, like, good guys that they have, so they're still good at the wide receiver, not having those guys gives the Falcons an ability to put more focus on Mike Evans. And I think Ibuka is going to be an absolute stud for them. And Baker Mayfield and all of them, he's getting the James Pierce Jr. kind of hype, but on the offensive side for the Bucs. But not having to deal with 4 of those guys or 3 of those guys still allows you to put more focus. And let's be real, as good as AJ Terrell is, if there's one guy in this league that's had his number, it's been Mike Evans. So you can put a little bit more focus on him and kind of hope that they can take care of Ibuka and be all right in that scenario. So another aspect where you're thinking about a lower score game, I think that not having those 2 wide receivers definitely is big for Tampa Bay.
Ideally, we blow them out. Ideally, the defense, 2-3 takeaways, a couple of strip sacks. We finally see a pass rush. Michael Penix, the run game is there. You see the offense gel that quickly. Let's get back to earth. It's going to be a close game either way. So ideally, maybe got 5 minutes left, Michael Penix leads what could be a game-winning drive. They go and take the lead. Baker Mayfield's got 1:30, 2 minutes left, and he is going to try and lead this Tampa Bay offense down the field to kick a game-winning field goal or something. And then you see James Pierce Jr. or Jalen Walker or somebody have a sack or maybe a strip sack or something, or force a pressure into a bad throw, into an interception, something along the lines where you're seeing the 1-2 combination of Michael Penix is that guy. This is not unrealistic. We saw him do it against the Panthers twice late in the season, or late in the game. Twice he did that, let him down for touchdowns. And then he did it again before that against Washington. So to act like he's going to struggle for 2.5 quarters isn't crazy. But then to also predict he's going to come alive in the 4th quarter is not crazy. What we just need to see is the 1-2 combination. Because how many times have we seen, even before Michael Penix, where we'd go down, score maybe a little too early, and then our defense just falters? Like, that's where, you see a lot of teams try and invest in that defense. That's where the defense, it's not going to be the first drive. But I'm sure Baker and Tampa Bay are going to get some points, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. But it's late in the game where all the investment kind of shines through. And that's my hope. At least how the game, I think, could go.
I imagine it's going to be, it's a 2.5-point favorite. Bucs are a slight favorite in this game at home at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So I imagine it is going to be a close game. These games usually come down to the wire. Both games last year came down to the wire. I know there's a lot of moving pieces, but, both teams are dealing with things. Week 1 is probably going to come down to the final possession. And I think it's funny because the Atlanta Falcons, if they win this game, like I expect them to in a close game, it's going to happen one of 2 ways, and you mentioned it. Michael Penix is going to be leading us down the field, and he's going to score, game-winning field goal, game-winning touchdown, whatever it is in the final seconds, and Baker Mayfield's not really going to have a shot, and we're going to be like, oh, my God, Michael Penix is him, just building off how he ended last year, and that's going to excite the hell out of us. But what could be even more exciting is the combination of the 2, as you mentioned, where it's like we score with a minute left or we score with 2 minutes left, and it's like Baker's got time to go down there and get a game-winning field goal, and those guys that you just mentioned create the pressure, create the sack. And that's
ideal.
That's ideal. That's
realistically ideal.
Yeah, because I'm with you. The Falcons blowing the Bucs out of the
Probably
water.
Not going to happen.
It would be amazing. When do we blow
Monday? I'd be Super Bowl.
When do we blow anybody out? Outside of like the Cowboys and like their 4th-string quarterback, like we don't blow anybody out. This is the NFL. It's a good team across from us. There's a lot of veterans on that team. It should be a good one, and I'm really excited to hopefully start the year 1-0 for just the 2nd time since 2017. We got some Braves talk coming up after the break.